Mike, I have a confession to make.
Can't wait.
Every stupid thing and mistake I've ever made is just hiding the fact that I'm secretly a genius. Today we're talking about Deep Space Nine Season 5, Episode 16, Dr. Bashir, I presume. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. As I said, and you should have presumed, we're talking about Dr. Brazier. Dr. Brazier? I think that's Dr. Zimmerman.
Season 1, he was Dr. Brazier.
He was definitely Dr. Brazier. I'm excited to talk about this episode. I was not there on the live watch along, so I don't know what Mike thinks. It's gonna be fun. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Keith. The cat got me. He scratched me one day, and the next day he bit me. So there's actually some puncture wounds over here. He likes my face. Now he was being very loving, and so I wasn't mad at him, and I definitely was asking for it. But yeah, I'm doing good, Keith. I don't sleep great anymore, but you know that's a different conversation for a different day.
Yeah, well, I feel a little underwater too, but I slept fine. I don't know why why I feel weird today, but you know, it's just one of those things. I think it's a little sinusy here in the end of
also
July.
Very sinusy.
In up here in New Jersey, where it doesn't rain anymore. Everywhere else gets rain except for
it almost
my house.
Rains. It looks like it's definitely gonna rain. Sometimes it's like it spits a little bit, but then it does not.
Yeah. So anyway,
Good podcasting,
nobody cares
good
about
stuff.
the weather. As I said copious times on our old show, Out of Practice podcast, Mike would give us the weather from 20 years ago. It was a very strange segment.
We thought we'd had to be long before we knew we could just be long.
We were just naturally long.
Yeah.
In every way but the one that you want it to be.
Wow.
All right, so last week's episode, we had so much to talk about. By Inferno's light, we had lots of interesting comments, lots of feelings about the episodes. We had some controversy.
Yeah, always.
It's gonna be fun. Lots to talk about. So I'm just gonna get right into it.
Let's do it.
Because we got a lot of patron comments, and that's how you get your comment read. Or you can leave a super thanks, and I will read your comment too. We have a new one this week.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very cool. All right, so Joshua Cronin says, I consider these two episodes just one, so I'm going to still go with a 96, like last week. Great fleshing out of already beloved characters, plot twists galore, sat there with my mouth wide open as a kid watching it. Still gives me chills when this all comes down the pipe. We keep saying this is the beginning of it, but Deep Space Nine is so great, I personally think we can say that 100 times in this series. I think we have. I think I've literally said, like, here we go, on 15 separate occasions. We've seen so much happen, and we still have so much more to go. It's so exciting. From Joshua Cronin. Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, and now we pay off. We get a Martok, we get some Garrick payoffs, as well as the fantastic Andrew Robinson performance, while sick with the flu and claustrophobic. And we get an amazing Worf moment. I cannot defeat him. I can only kill him. That line by itself redeemed years of Worf getting absolutely bloodied by every threat the Enterprise ever had. It never defeated him. I give this one 95 stem bolts plus another 11 stem bolts added retroactively to the previous episode to make them both a 95 bolter. I love the discussion of sexual orientation at the beginning. Some of our controversy about our feelings about Garrick, as friends of Garrick. Brian continues, I learned my sexuality was more fluid than I thought rather recently, and I blame two actors for that. Michael Fassbender as David and Walter in Alien Covenant. That flute scene caused me the feels. And of course the insurmountable Olympus that is Anson Mount and the massive wave of man crushes he causes. Yeah, I tell you, Anson Mount, man. It's a dark power the man has. So we got a message from Eric Crump, who is not a patron, but gave us a super thanks paid in Korean won. Kamsamnida. One of the most memorable character moments in the entire series is Kira's immediate order to fire phasers at Ducat upon discovering his intentions. Given the context and scope of the situation and putting aside the supernova plot for a moment, attacking Ducat's ship could have given the Dominion casus belli and started a war right then in there. In short, it was an incredibly risky order to give. You know what? Yeah, I hadn't even really considered it, but yeah. Upon thinking about that moment a little more, Eric continues, I suppose it could be a more natural, personal, and irresponsible knee-jerk response between those two foils. But when I first saw it, and every time since, it always struck me as the moment when Kira understood the gravity and context perfectly well, and still didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Whether out of personal reasons, practical military necessity, or some blend of the two, Kira doesn't mess it around. Got a lot of respect for that. 95 self-sealing stem bolts. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Yes.
I'm assuming all the way from our friends in South Korea. I had a lovely time there when I was there last. Harry Pothead says 95 stem bolts. The days of pushover Worf are over, and Garrick becomes an even deeper recurring character. Bashir seems to have become an adult. We get the proof that Ducat is willing to kill people he considers friends. Martok stays on the station. Great episode. And weighing in on our conversation about Garrick, he says Andrew Robinson says he played him gay to start with, so there's no question, really. Kevin Miles gives this episode 95 self-sealing stem bolts. Ryan Chesley, on the other hand, said this episode didn't hold up as well this time around. 80 self-sealing stem bolts. Interesting. Hibernation Pod says, I totally get what the feeling of such deep fears is like, talking about Garrick's claustrophobia. Though I am not claustrophobic. I am not claustrophobia personified. I do have other phobias that plague me. I have always used this episode as a reference point to think about and give me strength in moments where I fear my mentality is failing me. It was rarely enough in moments long ago that I could have counted, but time has moved on and I have changed and learned so much. Maybe I can call on it again when the time really counts for something more important. Who knows, right? Yeah, as someone who has dealt with sort of like phobia, OCD, anxiety kind of stuff over the years, boy, do I get it. Hibernation continues. Worf, here in his own way, taught me to never bow or yield to anyone. I try to carry that with me the best I can. This episode, though is different, was just as good to me as the last one. Another 98 self-sealing stem bolts. Also, Terminator in 1984 pretended to be Sarah's mom on the phone, 100%. Pointing out that I thought Data did it before Terminator. No, you're 100% right. Terminator 1 in 84. All classics, all winners. No one's diminished in my mind on that one. Mysterious Anne says 90 self-sealing stem bolts. I really like the insight that these two episodes are a turning point for the whole series. I also liked Keith's comparison to the Battle of the Five Armies, especially when the Romulans show up. All due respect to Peter Jackson, but the Rankin and Bass animated Hobbit is the greatest. We had a lot of fun introducing the mysterious children to it a couple of years ago and singing all the songs, of course.
I haven't revisited that in quite a while, and it might be time.
I have not seen it since I was a kid, but I do remember...
Perhaps it should find its way to our Plex server, Keith.
I think maybe it should. Maybe it should. But I do remember the feeling that I had watching it, where it's like, oh, this is fun. But then when the armies started showing up, I felt like this sense of epic that I think like all the Marvel movies, like the Endgame scenario, was trying to emulate, and I don't think anything could ever match that first feeling. I think I mentioned the Lloyd Alexander Chronicles, that the final book, I think it was The High King, had a battle very similar to that, and it just, for whatever reason, as like a little boy, I was like, whoa, whenever that happened.
It was just The Hobbit, right?
It was just The Hobbit, yeah. which is not the Lord of the Rings. Obviously,
Yes.
that's a much bigger piece.
You know what else animated, now that she's brought that into my fore, that I haven't watched in so long that I loved, was The Secret of Nim. Remember?
Sure, the rats one.
Yeah. That book, I loved that book. I remember having it read to me in 4th grade, and then I watched the movie, and I was like, just transport with that world. And I believe they're remaking that as well.
That would make sense. That was not a touchstone for me. I don't remember exactly, but I'm certainly familiar with it. Anyway, Anne continues. Thanks to Jason Moe, who got me started out with some great recommendations. I've read a good number of Deep Space Nine books featuring Garrick, and I like the way that a lot of the authors, especially Andrew Robinson and Una McCormick, address Garrick's sexuality. It's never explicitly defined, shown, including attraction, affection, and loving relationships with both men and women. That's B canon, of course, but it seems to fit and expand on what we see in the series with a bit more freedom than the studio would ever allow in the 90s. Yeah. YouTube viewer makes an important point about one of Garrick's deepest loves and motivators being Cardassia. And that's a good one to keep in mind for more understanding of his character. Yeah, I think that is a good. I think all of that is great. I also like that Keith brought up about Ducat pretending to care, but shedding relationships easy, while Garrick pretends not to care and is in fact more deeply connected to the people he cares about. Another fun thing I picked up from the books: Ducat's first name is Scrain. What a great evil name. Love it. Scrain Ducat. Oh, what a great name. On one of the other podcasts I listened to, the hosts are getting ready to be panel moderators at Star Trek Las Vegas. How do we get you guys into a gig like that? You'd be great. I'm assuming you're talking about Matt and Andy, because I also enjoy that podcast. I would love to have a gig like that. I think, how do we get us to do that? Double our viewership, then double it again like 9 or 10 times,
or just
and then
have
we'd
such
chance.
a loud fervor from our current viewers calling for it. We probably would have had to submit ourselves to the panel too. I'm sure there's red tape.
Mike, I don't think there's a. I think let me try to explain the scale.
XO6 is also
going
to be over at Trek Vegas, and I think they've got some cool stuff they're going to be showing there. You can check out some of their stuff on our channel. Also, I reached out to the head of XO6, Keith, and now we are Facebook friends and we are chatting.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, that's cool. Well, you never know. But Star Trek, the next conversation, I think we get maybe 0.5% of their viewership, so that makes a difference. All right.
We're sort of like, in the big whales, they have those like little sucker fish that just like attach themselves. That's us.
No. Matinee, that podcast is a suckerfish to Star Trek. We are a suckerfish to the suckerfish.
Okay,
we're
suckerfish like to the suckerfish. I'll take it.
We're like a mite. We're like Anyway. YouTube viewer says, I'll admit Garrick seemed to have a vague vibe of being attracted to Bashir, but in season 4 episode 22, For the Cause, Garrick seemed to have a hetero crush on Ziel with lots of awkwardness. Although I think that I think the canon really is that Garrick is probably omnisexual, as opposed to straight. But he's certainly not just regular straight. Since this is the only time we see Garrick interact with his own species, other than Ducat, I thought this clearly showed he was hetero. I guess in hindsight, he was just lonely in the generic sense, not in a sexual sense. I still think longing for the company of fellow Cardassians shows Garrick's true love for his patriotism. This was an awesome episode. Good characterizations, good pacing, technobabble I could actually follow, and of course, great guest stars. My only grouse is that I don't like vaporizing bodies. It seems like lazy special effects. At 10 years old, I made silly videos with my friends where we disappeared people. We'd hit pause on my dad's video camera and have disappeared person walk out, then turn the camera back on. That's what they did in Star Trek too. I would hope a professional TV studio would do better. It's bad sci-fi. Yeah. I mean, new tech is new tech. Who the hell knows? But yeah, I see your point. I did early morphing in the 90s. I couldn't integrate it directly into the VHS camera, but I had a program, sort of morph animate on the computer. So I would take the two photos, and then you would like literally like assign the dots on the correct parts of the face, and then it would auto morph. But in order to get that into my videos, I had to stop filming, then film the computer monitor, do the morph, and then cut back.
So I do a lot of video cutting and different stuff, like very basic but specified video stuff for work and for this channel, and like very basic color grading, very basic rotoscope and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, point being, all of the effects and the transitions that you can do now is we all know how crazy that is. But one thing that AI has really jumped in and has started to take over is rotoscoping. So if you figure, in pictures it's easy, in static images it's easier to kind of like draw an outline and then cut something out or mask it or whatnot. But think about a moving image, right? If you want to color grade or do something specific to just a part of that image while it's moving throughout the scene, that's really hard to do because you have to track it frame by frame. So for every second of video, that's 24 frames. You got to move it. You got to re-outline it
with motion blur. Yeah. With
so
all that.
It's insane. However, AI now, if you can basically track out one figure in a scene and to like I would say 80% accuracy, it can rotoscope it all the way through the scene.
Can naturally track.
And it's just, I mean, there are people whose job that is completely going to just obliterate because that's their job, is to rotoscope.
Yeah. But and obviously we don't want anybody losing their job. That feels like a thing that makes sense to use 100%. AI on, because it's sort of the grunt work and can free people up to do more creative things.
I just used it today. But I guess whatever. So we're gonna this Sunday we'll air another unboxing of something someone sent us in the mail, and I realized, I have exposed both of our addresses for about 10 seconds in the video. Now, before, I'd have to just slap like a really ugly blur on the screen and like track it around. But instead, I just tracked out the box, had it rotoscope it for those 10 seconds, and then just applied a blur, and it was done. And I was like, oh boy, that's awesome.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Anyway. So yes, automation can help us with the boring work, but let's stay out of the artistic part. Thank you very much. YouTube viewer finishes. I really liked that the Klingons are understanding about mental illness in Star Trek. I do too. I think that's great. It makes them stronger. If Taylor Swift was a Klingon, the song Bad Blood would be very different. I'd mentioned Taylor Swift writing a song. Very funny. It might be a wormhole that a single person can destroy a sun with a small bomb. One wonders why no one else tried this before and we didn't see anyone try it again. Fair point. 95 out of 100 self-sealing stem bolts. Great episode with one annoying thing. Sports injuries hurt, but as Americans, we are more likely to be killed by heart disease and other ailments exacerbated by our sedentary lifestyles. Ooh, truth bombs. Speaking of what hurts, truth bombs. JD says, joining Serial? What? Yeah, our openers are terrible. Didn't even understand what I meant.
Like today, you said you're a secret genius, but I thought you were going to say you were secretly enhanced. You know what I mean? Like
enhanced genius, same thing. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, cool.
Yeah. My genius is natural. Good, bad, or ugly, it's natural. JD says, Battle of Five Armies, great comparison. It's the Romulans as the Eagles. That's funny. JD points out that Liberace had been outed by the 90s. He died in 87 from AIDS-related complications. He'd been outed, but did he specifically come out himself? I don't really know. And he died from AIDS in 87, which kind of blew out the secret there. JD says, as a queer person, I have never considered that you two say any kind of microaggression. In fact, if you can, I would encourage you to go find and buy a Friend of Garrick t-shirt. Yeah, I literally went and looked for that. I doubt I have to explain what that is referring, since you both know enough Friends of Judy. Indeed, we do. And I know that while you sometimes make wink and nod jokes, you don't intend it maliciously. Jesse Gender has done terrific videos about Dax's queerness and transness, worth checking. I have checked that Jesse Gender. Jesse Gender's great. Yeah, and I think like if there was any confusion about my points last week about YouTube comments viewers asking if we were doing microaggressions by pointing out Garrick's queerness. And I think that the point I didn't make clear is that I thought the microaggression was assuming that us pointing out his queerness was a negative, as opposed to a wonderful thing that we support and embrace. And I thought the very idea of pointing out somebody's queerness being negative felt weird to me, and I was pushing back against that.
Absolutely, and I to put I don't want to get too into the weeds, but to put a fine point on it, Keith and I have strong opinions. However, I don't think we are infallible, nor are we ever not wrong, right? So we welcome conversation, we welcome being called out on some BS, but intention is the important thing JD points out. We are attempting to be very inclusive. We are attempting to defend people in our community that might need it because we sit in a very privileged position, not only being like straight white dudes, but also like having some sort of viewership on the internet. So yeah, that's kind of where we're coming from.
And honestly, I think that is exactly my objective. Anytime I push back, my objective is to defend the viewers, the people watching this who are in that community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who it is incumbent on us to stand up for and defend, and whether it's part of the gay community, the queer community, the trans community, any community, it's on us to stand up and defend.
Yeah, Keith and I have conversations behind the scenes because I often attempt to act as a Switzerland, but that is not because I welcome dissent respectfully. That is about.
Well, I welcome dissent. I do not welcome intolerance.
Yes, 100%.
Coded and shaded though it may be.
Yep.
Right. And it is very important to me that this is a safe space.
I feel like
for all those communities here, and anybody coming for any of our communities, you will be defended. Anyway. That's my point.
What I wanted to carve out there was like I wanted to give us space to come up short sometimes because
oh my god, no, we're going to be constantly wrong. That's part of the whole idea. But you're right, intent is the important definition. JD continues, maybe not Mike yet. Maybe not Mike yet. Spoilers, because he knows me. The fan film Star Trek New Voyages Blood and Fire on YouTube is based on a script by David Gerrold, the writer of Trouble with Tribbles, who is also gay, and it is a script that he pitched to Gene back in the day, Gene Roddenberry, back in the day about a pair of gay officers, and it finally got made a few years ago and guest stars Denise Crosby. You should both check it out. In fact, if you wanted to do that as a watch-along, I'd be down for that. Interesting. It says so many pretentious things, like starting a sentence at opera school. Guilty.
I think I called you for that too.
Yeah, you did too. Yeah. See, accountability. Here we are. There's a lot of conveniences to the stories, but I do like it a lot. 88 self-sealing stem bolts. Actually, appropriate to this conversation. I just like to shout. I rarely shout out folks who aren't patrons or leave us a tip. But Joe Eager, it's for you, buddy. Man, do I hate progressive supremacists. I'd never been called a progressive supremacist before, but I was like, that was a good one. And if by that you mean I believe that ideas can be superior to others, but people cannot, guilty. All right, so this episode aired. Let's get into the episode. On February 24th, 1997. Sure did. The top song. Oh, Mike, are you ready for this? Wannabe, Spice Girls.
I want to zigga 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 zig.
That was much more upsetting than I expected that to be.
Everything we just said about inclusivity has been thrown out the window as I just became some sort of a groomer. That is, I gotta delete that from the buttons. I just hit voice disguiser and didn't know.
Oh, you were disguised as something I don't ever want to.
If you want to be my lover, you gotta get with my friends.
Nope, your friends are not interested. Hard pass from the friends.
I wanna
really zigga
zig.
That did not make it better.
Is this any better?
God.
Same thing. Okay, that's better. Maybe next time. Okay.
Somebody come and take Mike's toys away, please. The top movie. Perfect. Speaking of people digitally altering things to make them worse, the top movie was Empire Strikes Back Special Edition.
Was nobody releasing any other movies at this point?
They were running up to Phantom Menace, so they were going to re-release the original series in the year before.
Oh, Phantom Menace.
There it is. Mike, what was on TV tonight? I know there's something exciting.
Sure. A couple of things I found interesting. One, ABC said, you know what? Cancel all of our prime time. We need a special Happy Birthday, Elizabeth. I can only imagine it was Elizabeth Taylor's birthday, and ABC thought it was important to get 3 hours of programming out of it.
Elizabeth Taylor? Okay.
What other Elizabeth could it be?
Oh, Elizabeth, I don't know. Elizabeth Hasselbeck?
Happy Birthday, Elizabeth. It could have been maybe the Queen, but my guess is...
some of my best friends are named Elizabeth.
Yeah, but the ABC wasn't doing a special on them. Okay.
You don't know.
The other thing of interest, I noticed Fox at 8:30 to 10. No, yeah, 9 to 10 was an hour. Was Married with Children. Breaking Up is Easy to Do. Part 1 of 2. Part 2 of 2. Oh, they aired both 1 and 2. Okay, I get it now why it was an hour. But here's my point of that. I thought to myself, Married with Children was still running in 1997? And then I looked back. Do you know when Married with Children started, Keith? I mean, I loved Married with Children, don't get me wrong, but I forgot how huge it was. It started... What year did Married with Children start its air?
Well, it was Fox, so this is the very, very early days of Fox, so I'd put it at, 89?
87!
Woo!
Do you know how many seasons Married with Children ran? Clearly.
12, 13, right?
11 seasons.
Yeah.
Which shocked me. So this is the final season of Married with Children, and this is the exact midway point. So we're almost at the end of the run of this series.
Wow.
And that was what was airing tonight.
Okay. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode of Married with Children.
There was a show
I wonder how it holds up. Probably not great.
I actually was thinking to myself, I was like, that would be fun to go through. WB was airing a show called Savannah. With an episode... by the way, it ran from 8 till 10, so maybe it was a movie. But it was called Oh No, Mr. Bill, I Don't, was the name of the...
Oh, okay. So actually, speaking of Savannah, this is more of an offline conversation, but next week I'm flying to Chicago to see Midnight on Tuesday, so we might have to mess up our schedule. All right, anyway. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil musical. It's going to be great. I've already seen it. So, Voyager, what was Voyager doing? They were doing the episode Rise with the orbital tether thing. Interesting episode, very cool idea, and it's a real thing. Like what they do is they have if we were able to get a cable high enough up into orbit, the rotation of the Earth would actually keep it up. So you could actually take stuff up to orbit without putting it through the space station or having to shuttle it really easily if you could get a cable that long and actually get it up there.
Now, Keith, question for you.
Yes?
Would you consider this a crossover episode?
Dr. Bashir, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Sort of, kind of?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, sort of, kind of. It's like a soft crossover. Because there's no actual character that crosses over, although we do see holographic versions of Zimmerman on Voyager. But yeah, sort of. What was happening with the Weekly World News headline? Boy, Adam and Eve, they're naked in the garden. Don't have a heck of a lot to do other than eat forbidden apples. So guess what? They had a baby. Which I suppose if we all came from Adam and Eve, they'd kind of have to, right?
They'd have to have most likely a few.
A few. Yeah, because it's gonna get weird if you really think that one through. You know what I mean? Like the babies gonna make other babies. You know, see what I mean? Anyway, don't worry about pulling it up. It's fine. So, this episode was directed by David Livingston, who last directed The Muse. And it was written by Ronald D. Moore, the fantastic writer and creator of many great series that we love, with a story by Jimmy Diggs, who came up with the story of this and 6 episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Mike, I think it's time for something incredible.
Now keep waste your time with trivial trivia.
I mean, I know I made that video, but I am still startled by my stupid face coming across the screen every week.
It's very large. You chose to crop it very large.
Well, yeah, it's usually because of the headshot being cropped at the shoulder, so I have to get it down.
I love when we're startled by ourselves. My wife has taken to wanting to send Keith pictures of like me with the cat or the dog in the morning when we're having our coffee, but now because of the puppy, we get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my face, nobody wants to see that. And I keep telling her, I was like, please crop my head out of that. Like, whatever you do, send Keith whatever you want, but please crop my face out of it because I
But it's your face you're worried about as opposed to your balls and your shorts and your boxers?
I mean, whatever.
Don't crop my balls, crop my face.
I don't want pictures of like my bags and my
Oh, please. I just shot my own headshots this week.
Ooh,
I
couldn't
know a lot of It's not good, but at least there aren't other people involved. That's what I like. I can shame spiral all by myself in my living room. All right, so trivial trivia. Dr. Louis Zimmerman was named for Herman Zimmerman, a production designer for the Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and the 4 Next Gen movies. Love the little Easter eggs there. Despite playing his father, Brian George, who plays Richard Bashir, is only 13 years older than Siddig was. He still is only 13 years older than Siddig. According to Chase Masterton, this is fun, no exit line was written for Bob Picardo as Dr. Zimmerman when he was leaving to go hit on that lady. So he was allowed to improvise one. Never happens on Deep Space Nine. And I checked the script, there is no line there. On the first take, he said to the woman, "Are you familiar with my work on Voyager?" Which got a big laugh from the original crew, but couldn't be used, obviously. So he brought up the Kama Sutra, was somehow even weirder. After Dr. Zimmerman learns of Dr. Bashir's enhancements, he files a report that Bashir is unsuitable as a model for the EMH Mark II, and will begin looking elsewhere. We don't see this happens, but we know it happens off screen. In the following year, bit of a spoiler, but I think Mike won't remember, in the Voyager episode Message in a Bottle, it turns out that he found a possible prototype replacement in none other than Andy Dick goes as EMH Mark II I love that episode. It is so much fun. After Jimmy Diggs pitched the story for this episode, he didn't hear back from the producers for over a year. When he eventually did get a call from Ronald D. Moore, he thought it was a friend playing a practical joke on him, and he made Moore prove that he was who he said he was. So, folks, you submit stuff everywhere, you never know. It might be years later. I'm still hoping. I submitted some stuff in 2008 that I really think have promise. So we're going to find out. In explaining any potential continuity problems between the revelation that Dr. Bashir is genetically enhanced and the previously established behavior and personality of his character, Ronald D. Moore explained, "It really explained a lot about the character to me. He's had some strange jigs and jags in his profile over the course of the 4 seasons. We have this guy with a lot of arrogance, who's almost became a professional tennis player, who has all these different tales of why and how he went to medical school and why he didn't become the valedictorian of his class, and who has something about his past on Earth he doesn't want to talk about. When Odo was going to Earth in Homefront, he asks Bashir, 'Is there anybody you want me to look up?' And Bashir says, 'I have nobody there I want to talk to.' Remember when that happened? And it was like, that's weird. There's something in this guy's backstory that is interesting, and it suddenly all made sense if this was a guy who'd been genetically engineered to be very, very smart, who'd had to hide it all of his life."
So then the question I have becomes the gangliotic fiber or whatever, that question, right? Did he must have thrown it, right? He threw that test?
Yeah.
His response in that episode where he's up for that award or whatnot, and they're coming, like, does it hold up under scrutiny, I guess, under rewatch?
I think it does, actually, because I've given this a lot of thought over the years, and this is a bit of a wormhole for the end, but sure, let's talk about it now. I actually think it does hold together, because in a situation like that, you would be conflicted about that decision. That would be a really difficult decision, right? Because his ego wants him to be the best. He knows that he can. His sense of self-preservation knows that he can't. And so he's going to be going over that decision and like, oh, maybe I could have gotten away with it. Maybe like, who knows? I might have gotten it right anyway. So it's almost like, how do you, like, if you're cheating at Scrabble, right? And you look up and you check a Scrabble dictionary and you're like, oh, I totally would have gotten that. So I'm going to use that. Did you cheat? Did you not? Were you just being lazy? I don't know. And so you feel all these weird, complicated feelings about it. And so he has that arrogance of like knowing I'm smarter than everybody else, but having to hide it, and the shame and the regret. And, it just puts you, it makes you weird. It messes with your brain. That's why we shouldn't cheat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Mike, who never cheats? Who never lies? Who doesn't need to be genetically enhanced to be superior?
Would that be the patrons, Keith? Yeah,
it sure would.
That's true, But they can financially enhance themselves, which would improve their status with us.
It would de-enhance themselves. Yeah. It would enhance us.
No, I watch this show every week, and sometimes we have a great amount of people jumping in, sometimes just a few amount of people, but it's always fun, and you can get that privilege by being a patron. Brian Beersock, Peter Bank, Frank Wrench, who sent us something in the mail. You're going to see it on Toys this weekend. So awesome.
Oh my God. Holy crap, yes.
In fact, he's going to get himself in another spot on the slide as well.
Sure is. Oh, I updated one of them. Didn't update the other one.
Quark's Bar? Yanba? Ryan Chesley. Ryan, I thought you asked, I missed you this week on the watch along. I thought you were during the day you liked better. Anyway. We might go back to the nights because the day is kind of tough.
Ryan has a life.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Joshua
Not available 24/7.
Merritt Neath, but he was the one. He was excited about it this week. Andrew Hayes, Alan, and the mysterious, and we saw that message you sent us. We're going to get back to you. Worf's Big Old Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Harry Pothead, Anton Thies, Carl Fisher, CRM, Nicola. Oh, boy, do me and CRM have something cooking, Keith. Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Delusions at Noon, YouTube viewer, James Hubbard, Hibernation Pod, Miri, Brian from Video Game Drive-By, finally got to check out the show, Brian. Digging it. Odo's Bucket, JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, Pat, Joshua Cronin again, JD 3 times, #, Lutz, Kramer, White Eldridge, Andreas. You can join the team. In fact, if you join the team for long enough, Keith, you could become a Hall of Famer! Woo! Casey Clark, Brian Kaufman, Jason Moe, Joshua Cronin, Mysterious Am, Andrew Hayes, the Big Old Boot Shivvies, Jennifer Massanova from back in the day, Cloud Lover 69, Jorge Navoa, Charles Babbage, Brian Kilp, Beersock, Frank Wrench. You can join the team.
What do you need to go and put a wallet in your mouth so you don't swallow your tongue? What's happening over there?
He puts the wallet.
He puts the wallet in the mouth where it gets the hose.
And Frank Ridge, who sent us the most spectacular, amazing gift. You're going to see it on Toys on Saturday. Also like to throw a shout out to our patron Carl Fisher, who's going to be a delegate at the DNC in Chicago.
Is anybody? So continue on with that, then I will take on.
No, that's it. I just think it's cool.
Is anybody going to Vegas? Is anybody going to Vegas? If you do go to Vegas, the Star Trek Vegas, and you see a Quark, an X06 Quark, I kind of am obsessed with it. It looks so awesome, but online they're like $700.
Oh my God.
But if they got any at the X06 booth that are like regularly priced, I will pay for it. So hit me up. KeithandMikeEntertainment@gmail.com.
You want other people in this day of checked bags costing $10 trillion?
I trust.
Like I can't like bring, like, I'm flying to Chicago, right? Like I said, I can't even like bring a Snickers without paying
trust.
$70 for. I don't know.
I trust.
Sure. Our guest stars this week include Brian George as Richard Bashir, Max Grodenchik as Ram, Chase Masterton as Lita, Fadwa Al-Gundi as Ashma Bashir, and J. Patrick McCormick as Bennett. But of course, we are all here for the special guest appearance by Robert Picardo as Louis Zimmerman and the original EMH. God, what fun! What fun to have Bob Picardo there. You know, Jillian did a musical with him.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Yeah, really nice guy, and it was like right after Voyager finished, something like that. But like, it's really cool. She had no idea how cool it was.
No.
Anyway.
You rarely do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he did Gemini, the play on Broadway. Then they did a musical version of it. And he also did the musical because he's a singer. And so Jillian did the musical version with him in Philadelphia a few moons ago.
On the streets of Philadelphia, Keith?
On the streets of Philadelphia. All right, what do you say we hop into a screening room? Okay, here we are in our teaser, and we see that Lita is running the Dabo tables now with Klingons, because we have a Klingon presence on the station now permanently, which is cool. While Ram and Quark discuss Ram finally asking Lita out. Ram is nervous and can't even do it when practicing. And Lita comes up to give him the chance, and he can only muster, bye, and leaves. Ram, I feel you. I think you're describing me up until the point I was about 32, and then I was married, and now it's me again.
It's funny when he, as he's operated in the friend zone, he's very capable, obviously. But now that he's trying to break that barrier,
but now he knows that the door is open a little bit, and like crossing that barrier for people like me and Ram, not so easy.
When you look back though, and you look at all the signs you got when like people were digging you, that means it's easy now. They are giving it, I guess doubt and anxiety.
Yeah, but Mike, you had people who dig you.
No, it took a while, buddy. But I'm thinking, looking back, maybe I did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, all those.
I should have not been wearing sweatpants all the time.
Should have not been wearing this the whole time. That was my problem. All right, so Ram runs off, and Lita and Quark discuss. She likes him. She knows he likes her, but she can't figure out why he's not making the move.
Time out. Can we just appreciate that freaking coat? Somebody made that coat, and I want it.
It's an amazing coat.
Can you imagine Ram. Here we go. Noggin Ram. Quark gets to wear the coolest stuff. The coolest stuff.
Mike, you realize you're just as racist as this Diet Mountain Dew.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry, I don't mean to couch things like that.
Sorry, Quark, you're a dirtbag in this scene.
Yeah, yes, and Quark responds to Lita saying this by being volcanically sexist in a way that is just like so ouch. It's hard to move forward on.
Ferengi, give me a break, am I right?
Wow.
Thanks, everybody.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm going to say this now and then not continue saying it the whole rest of the episode. But my thought here is, why can't Lita ask him out? Like it feels very like old school, like 90s gender roles. Now, and I understand that Lita represents sort of like the old timey whatever, but like she can ask him out. She knows he's nervous. Why is she going to blow up both of their lives because it's his job to ask her out? Like, and I think that is the only part of this episode that feels so like blatantly of its time. But then again, we wouldn't have that whole storyline if.
Yeah, I mean, the way I've couched it as far as lore is concerned, this is flimsy at best, but I like it for the storytelling aspect or the inclusivity of it, is that mayhaps, however kind of shy and unsure Rom is, Lita is more so.
She hides it better.
And she needs that validation from him before she can take the step. I mean, they definitely are playing it as thus she's just waiting. So
right,
that would kind of...
She holds all the cards and she can.
But
maybe it's a front.
If we look at it through my lens there, that sort of takes away the sort of visual gag of the, oh, she's so much prettier than him, and oh, he's getting with a, like, and we see that, other people are attracted to the Ferengi, and so it's not, but that would just, obviously that is there in the storytelling, that she is on a different level as him, as far as beauty and such is concerned, so.
I like your story better than what we got. I would,
yes.
I think your story of the super hot show person, like, secretly is just as insecure as Rom, and they're like nerds in love, even though one of them looks like that. I would actually really like that story.
See, it's funny. The Lita Rom of it is my least, to me, the least objectionable Lita beat in this whole plot.
No, agreed. There's that. Oof.
She just sort of decides to have no agency, but of course she does a good job of performing it to the fact where she's like, I have nothing, I come from nothing, I have no real skills. I mean, she does play it lacks a huge amount of confidence, and clearly my guess is that her lore, her backstory is not very supported.
Probably reinforcing that. Yeah. So, no, and certainly we all exist, right? All these people exist, but, and I'm not sure that the show is treating her like she has no agency. I think the show is treating her like someone who thinks she doesn't.
Yes, 100%, which is going to have some good storytelling. I also would say it reeks of, and we will leave it here, I think, I'll speak with Keith words, it reeks of dudes done write this episode.
Yes. Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah. That is 100% true. And the last thing I'll say on this about why an alternate version as to why she wouldn't ask Rom out is that in Ferengi culture, because of the gender roles there, a woman asking a man out to Ferengi culture would be monumentally emasculating.
Also, don't think a man would ask a woman out. It sounds to me like it's more of like a placement situation and more of like a...
It would be a business transaction.
Yeah, or an ownership type, like a transfer of property scenario.
Well, like we find out later about what happened with Rom's and his wife. But anyway, so like I could imagine her not clocking how progressive Rom is and that he wouldn't feel that way. But we know that Quark would.
So let's leave it for now at... They both are wildly unfamiliar with this type of pairing because Ferengis don't generally have this type of pairing.
And that's true. We have a huge cultural differences that maybe they're not quite sure how to navigate yet. So I get that too. All right. Meanwhile, O'Brien and Bashir are playing darts, and O'Brien is on a winning streak. I'll think more about this later. And they discuss fatherhood, and Bashir makes it clear that he is not the family type. He's not going to be able to vote anymore. Then, holy crap, Robert Picardo wanders on and asks for Bashir. It's Dr. Zimmerman, and he is here to make Bashir immortal. Now, in the context of everybody else, that's a really big moment. To have all of a sudden Bob Picardo just walked on the stage. Like, that's a huge crossover fun. But Mike, you've never seen an episode of Voyager, is that true?
No. My experience with Voyager is toys we've looked at, so I was familiar with this guy. some stuff I've seen from, I think, Discovery, is it?
Discovery?
Something, maybe. What am I thinking of? Perhaps, is he in Lower Decks or something? I don't know.
We saw the EMH on First Contact.
Yes, that's right. And that's correct. And also, of course, the figures, First Contact, and we looked at a press kit for Voyager from way back in the day.
That's right.
So I remember him from that.
That's right. Okay, all right. So, boy, we are filling in Mike's Star Trek lexicon.
Plus,
even
if I'm not
we haven't
mistaken,
watched the
Keith,
show
I've
yet.
heard rumors that he might be appearing on Starfleet Academy.
Yes, which would actually make sense in canon. Very exciting.
When does that take place? Is that like where in the? Is that?
I think it's
up to date.
I genuinely don't know, but I would imagine it takes place in the prime timeline, contemporary now.
Will I be able to watch it?
No, certainly not.
Mike, I want you to get into Star Trek. Don't watch anything.
You can't watch any of it, but you have to become obsessed. But it's working. One of us is wearing a Starfleet hat and the other one isn't, so it's clearly working.
That's true. No, I gotta watch it. Come on, I want to watch some of the newest, latest bests.
We're gonna watch Strange New World season 3.
Okay, you're right.
All
Hey,
right.
when is that?
I don't know. So in Act 1.
Let's go. Great.
In Act 1, we get a shot of the station and see that there's a lot more activity now with the Dominion so close. And we see a ship that's sort of a modified Voyager with some extra nacelles. Would have liked to see that ship better, but it's in the background though. It looks really cool. And Zimmerman, who is not the EMH, but actually the creator of the EMH, who modeled the EMH on his own personality.
2025.
2025. Okay, great. Well, that's sooner than you think. He explains the task. He's the inventor of the EMH and is now making the LMH, the long-term holographic doctor, because it is clear on Voyager the emergency medical hologram is supposed to be up for like 2 hours, not be running in perpetuity. And that's going to be one of the main storylines of Voyager. But the long-term one will be able to run indefinitely on remote locations. And we are reminded that Deep Space Nine does not have an EMH because of all the Cardassian tech. And they have an interestingly prescient conversation about AI here, about the fear of the EMH taking over and taking everybody's jobs. And I thought, wow, especially for 1996, this feels really freaking relevant. And we find out that Bashir is going to be the template for the LMH. And as I said, Zimmerman's the template for the EMH. So Zimmerman's going to be here for 3 weeks and begins making a ton of demands. Sisko is bemused, and Zimmerman is, of course, annoying. So the task begins with vice presidential vetting to create a realistic fake human. And O'Brien says, now you can irritate hundreds of new people. And they begin an optical scan, So we sort of see the process begin. Later, Zimmerman pervs on Lita with Bashir. And Bashir says, oh yeah, that's my ex. Which, to be fair, is a bit of a mic drop. So, good on you. And Zimmerman, of course, is like, we're gonna interview her. So, then just...
So, hold on, I had a question during the episode.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, sure.
No, seriously. Oh, yeah. And seriously. In this shot, right, is she making eyes at Zimmerman, showing potential interest, or is she looking at her old flame and being like, hey?
I take this as her being professional. It is her job to make eyes at everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's actually a really great answer.
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna stick with that.
Do I think my wife has to flirt a little bit at her job? Yeah, probably.
Doesn't everybody?
Yeah.
I mean, if this isn't a seduction of the audience, I don't know what is. So, yeah. So then, Bashir very pointedly asks Zimmerman not to interview his parents. And of course, Zimmerman instantly decides to do just that. And in Act 2, they examine a test image of the new holographic Bashir. And I think there's some really excellent compositing of both Bashirs in that scene. It doesn't talk or do anything yet. Then they activate the EMH, and now we have 2 Picardos and 2 Bashirs. And they transfer the EMH's brain into the LMH, and they bicker. It's a pretty funny bit, and I thought just the special effects compositing, getting all 4 of them into a shot, I thought was really excellent.
So is Picardo super snarky and quippy and Voyager? Is that sort of his
Oh
vibe?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So and there is a subtle difference between Zimmerman and the EMH, and so that and that speaks to Bob's immense talent as a performer. Zimmerman is a slightly hornier, slightly like grungier and angrier version of the EMH, but still has that. He's definitely grumpy and snarky and fun.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'll whatever. We're not going to get there for a couple of years. I think that the Doctor, the EMH, is maybe the best character on all of Voyager.
Oh crap. Okay.
And was only intended to be, it's almost like a recurring guest star, and then almost becomes one of the major stars of the show, because of how good Bob is. Anyway, where was I? So then we begin doing the interviews, and Zimmerman rapid fires our main cast looking at the camera, kind of like we did in Worf's trial. We've done this convention a couple of times, which I think is really actually kind of fun. And they tell tales of annoying, horny Bashir, and O'Brien secretly says nice things, just don't tell Bashir. And lastly, Zimmerman asks out Lita. Uh-oh. And she says yes. And Rom sees her having dinner with Zimmerman and tunes his lobes in to listen, which I thought was like a fun little gag. That good Ferengi hearing.
I cannot move the things.
Oh, we're stuck. We're stuck.
Hold on, I gotta unstuck us.
Oh, it's not good. Gotta reboot the EMH.
Hold on. And nailed it.
Woo! Wow. That was really touch and go for a while.
I'm still trapped on Keith is seducing the audience.
Is it not working?
Gross.
Gross. Yes. Us gross, not the audience, mind you. So Rom tunes in, listens in on the date, and he goes and interrupts. And this is clearly what Lita wanted him to do. And she's excited. He's finally going to ask her out. But of course, once again, he panics and doesn't do it. And she's bummed. Almost as bummed as... Wow. I was wondering why we weren't getting our pictures forward, but yeah, that's perfect. That is an accurate representation. Right, let me just...
I can't get it right. There you go.
Well, if you're listening to the podcast version, you're either missing out or avoiding something that you don't want. You very pleased with yourself?
There's so much wrong about this. Hold on, I gotta really get it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate representation. Yeah.
Okay.
You just cut the white out. You did all this work to cut the head out. Just get rid of the white.
I was trying to do it whilst running an episode. Turns out I couldn't do either.
Yeah, right here. Woo!
All right, where are we on the episode, Keith? What's happening?
You know you want some.
Oh, we're interviewing. This is the Morn was the best part.
That's right. Morn getting a little beat there. Really funny, really fun. So then, like I said, Rom tries to ask out Lita, and of course, blows it. Oh, yes. Okay, so he panics and doesn't do it. She's bummed. And meanwhile, Bashir and Cisco peas and carrots a little bit until, Bashir's parents walk in. As I actually, you know, go by, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see like these screenshots. I think the shots of Ram and Lita there, go back a couple, just such good facial acting on both of their parts.
Yeah,
there.
Keith and I are clearly, we haven't discussed it, but I have a suspicion we're going to have stuff to say about this B plot. But it is not for the lack of chemistry. They have great chemistry with each other. Both incredible performances as well, so that helps. But the chemistry really carries this a lot of the way.
And it sort of needs to. But it makes sense. The joke, of course, is the odd couple, right? But it's really charming.
But also when you know, like when I'll zoom out a little bit, because if you're gonna have a B plot, one of the kind of problems with multi-plot episodes or B plots is that generally the B plot or the C plot, if you're like The Practice and you have 3 plots going, a story has to be told in not a lot of scenes, because the B plot generally doesn't get a ton of attention, especially when the plots don't intertwine. And so you need stories that you can kind of fill in the blanks, you know what I mean? And the chemistry takes it a long way. Clearly, already in this episode, by this point, you know, this is going to end with the scene in the airport where the girl's getting on the airplane and the guy's running down the airport terminal, right? That's the scene we're headed for. So you got to fill in a lot of the blanks, and their chemistry does so. That's in methinks.
Yeah, yep, for sure. All right, so, Bashir's parents are here. So in Act 3, so we've never seen them before.
This is, once again, I have to point out, we talk about this a lot, and just directing, right? Directing is about shots and about eye line, right? Now, when in photography, Keith, as you know, the rule of thirds applies. You don't always want to put something in the center of the frame. Generally, you're putting it into a third quadrant. However, when you're composing shots in the edit, you have to pay attention to where you want your viewer's eyes are starting to where they're going. If there's too much movement happening, generally you can lose focus. Now, granted, we're changing thematic. We're going from a scene here where she's on the bridge, but we're going to where the parents come in. But even watch the focus cut when we go from this scene to that scene. Do you see where her face is on the frame versus where the central character in the next scene focused on the parent is? It's great editing, it's great direction, it's great shot composition, and I think we need to call it out here and there.
And great set and lighting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
grading, even color grading. Like, this all looks like it's the same place at the same time, and you know that it's not unified on set all the time.
And one of the reasons I love the new uniforms is that they are color. They fit into the set incredibly well, because it's a lot of grays and purples and blues as the set, and now the uniforms match. And even though they built these uniforms for First Contact, I think they work best on Deep Space Nine because they really feel like they're of a piece with the Deep Space Nine set.
What a great shot here, too, where you can tell the exact story and where kind of everybody's mind frame is without knowing any of the plot of the episode.
Yeah. Very good point. So Bashir's father is a landscape architect, but he's got the vibe of someone overselling his resume, which both Mike and I are very familiar with doing. Yeah. But they're here for their interviews with Zimmerman. Bashir's looking very nervous about this, but we don't know why yet. Seems like they underlit this shot just a touch.
Maybe?
Yeah. So he goes to confront Zimmerman and finds O'Brien bashing his avatar into the wall over and over again, like any true friend would. I mean, if Mike and I ever had control over each other's avatar, that would be the first thing we would do.
Yeah, it's like when you're in VR and you see a button, or you're anywhere and you see a button. It's like, don't press this button.
Yeah, exactly. Bashir's pissed, but Zimmerman isn't having any of it. And the next morning, this is where we're going to see, like, what's happening here? Zimmerman arrives at Lita's quarters with flowers. And she's just gotten out of the shower and is only rocking a towel. And he's here with an offer. The job of a manager of the Jupiter Station Cafe. She's excited about this offer, so excited that she drops her towel.
This, I would say, tell me if I'm wrong, Keith. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm a prude. This is like 2 clicks away from just straight mail order bride style.
Yeah, it's interesting. I will be very curious to have a female perspective on this scene. Clearly a scene absent a male perspective in the writing room, for sure. And so, like, my first instinct is like, wow, this is like sexist exploitation bullshit.
Yeah,
On the other hand, right, as, you know, Lita is not a sex worker, but she is a body positive, non-shame based person.
Yes.
That is not necessarily, from her perspective, a big deal. It's more of a sort of European. Like, it's not like our prudish American.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't read it so much in that direction. In fact, my brain immediately went to Pretty Woman, right? It's very, here's this guy who's like a fancy guy, very cultured in her, you know, in her kind of reading, offering her this opportunity she could never even have dreamed of on a different, like all these, you know, it's like going shopping on Rodeo Drive with Richard Gere.
Sure.
It's like,
it's that too, yeah.
and I feel like that's kind of where I chalked it up to. And I thought that was more of just like I'm a ditzy bloop, whoop, right? Instead of anything, I didn't read any intention behind the towel drop. How it reads this big picture could be construed
I mean, I know the intention behind the towel drop because I you know, I don't have a lot of money, but I'll bet you most of my money that was in the trailer.
Oh, yeah, well.
You know.
I'd love to read her just kind of comments about how she thought Lita was. Also, I don't know where Lita's going, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to do too much reading.
Yeah. So
Keith forbids me from educating myself in any sort of way when it comes to this show.
I do. I want you uneducated and barefoot. That's my plan.
Yeah, he wants to Ferengi me.
Exactly. Yeah. So. So
you need to change my Founder's Goo Detective to female Ferengi.
Female Ferengi. But I do not. Please, I want you clothed at all times, every time. Nobody wants that. Yeah. So anyway, it's just, I don't know how I feel about this scene. I get it. Zimmerman does his best to cover his joy when the towel drops, and he proposes that she stay. See, here was the escalation that I was like, I don't know, buddy. Like, getting her the job, for sure, but offers her to stay in his quarters. It starts to be... I think that's where it gets weird.
Yes, 100%.
That is the moment where it clicks from, like,
100%.
Oh, you like this person, you know, there's an opening for her, great, give her an opportunity. Now stay with me in my quarters on a space station, which are inherently small. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there it is. What's up, Andrea Martin? Or that might be, what's her name? Anyway, for me, that's when it got weird.
100%.
Not when Mike became a Ferengi female. So here's where we get, we then go to the Bashirs, and I want to read this stage direction because I think that's interesting sometimes. It says, interior guest quarters. Bashir, Richard, and Amsha are having dinner. Although they haven't sat down to a meal in a long time, the old patterns are hard to break. Richard sets the tone and runs the conversation. Bashir seems to have a chip on his shoulder, and Amsha tries to referee. Now, that's not a direction to the director of how that's supposed to be set up. It's sort of to the actors, but it's interesting that that's there in the stage directions because I think it does inform the whole scene. Mm-hmm. So Bashir's father tells him a story from his career, again inflating his importance, and Julian calls him on it. He says, some very important people have expressed interest in my park designs. I have several good prospects on the horizons. Bashir says, you always have good prospects, but they always seem to stay just over the horizon. Ouch.
Well, it's good episode pacing because the way we know Bashir, we know he's clearly got issues with his parents, but since we don't know what, it's hard not to read this scene as him sort of being a dick.
Yeah. Well, and that line is him being a dick.
Yeah.
As somebody who always has some good prospects in the horizon, who has never achieved said good projects, in the 20-something years I've been trying to do this, like, ooh, that one was hit a little too close to home.
Oh, hell, I know it. We talk about it on the podcast. I've mentioned it many times. I'll mention it again. That one time my mom said to me at dinner somewhere, some lady was like, you could have been a stand-up comedian. You're hilarious. My mom goes, he could have been a lot of things. And I was like,
Ooh. Ooh.
I'm 43 years old, and it still smacks me right in the gut. I was like, damn,
Ouch.
sick burn, Mom. And by sick burn, I mean trigger core memory that has
like,
fucked me up for years.
boom.
Yeah.
Julian then gets to the point. There's a secret that he's trying to protect, one that they could all go to prison to if it gets out. And Richard, his father, says, you have a lot at stake. What about us? We could go to prison, Jules. Have you ever thought about that? Of course I've thought about it. That's why I want you to take this seriously. Oh, so now you're taking it seriously. You're not as bright as he is. We don't have your gifted intellect, so we can't see the perfectly obvious. That was terrible. I'm not going to get the part. Not getting the part. Bashir says, this is exactly why I haven't been home in 3 years. Yeah, I mean, I think the familiar battles about whatever it may be.
And there's some cool coded language in that too. Where, like, you know, for those of you on first watch, now that hearing you read it back, I was like, oh, you're gifted intellect. You're this. It sounds like the parents are just like, oh, you're too highfalutin
Yeah, you're
us.
being condescending to us as old people, but like, oh no, you mean that in a literal sense. Interesting. So in Act 4, later, Lita runs Zimmerman's proposal past Rom, and she gives him yet another opportunity to speak up. It's as if I had a reason to stay here, I would. Do I have a reason to stay, Rom? I mean, she's opened the door pretty darn far.
She's one towel drop short of just being explicit.
She should have tried that with Rom.
Oh,
yeah.
His head
But
might
of
have
course,
blown off his head.
Rom, it would have exploded.
Yeah.
Just literally, poof. Yeah, and Rom once again fails, and she storms off, disappointed. Then, Bashir's parents go to the lab to apologize to their son. Richard says, and just so there's no misunderstanding, I give you my word that at no time in our interview with Dr. Zimmerman will we ever mention or even hint at the fact that you were genetically enhanced as a child. Amsha says, Jules, you can trust us. Your father and I have kept the secret of your DNA resequencing for almost 25 years, and we are not going to let it out now. But I would just add that, despite what the authorities would like us to believe, genetic engineering is nothing to be ashamed of. You're not any less human than anyone else. In fact, you're a little more. Holy shit. Bashir is oddly unreactive because, of course, he's the LMH Bashir before all of his software updates. And, of course, Zimmerman and O'Brien heard the whole thing. Real Bashir is furious, and he and O'Brien hash it out. But before we do that, so that's a really big reveal that just happened here. We'll obviously talk about all the larger implications and stuff, but like, what was your first reaction to that idea?
Well, I sort of thought, at least in my opinion, that my journey through this show is sort of been perfect for this reveal for me, because I have just enough insight into, because of Strange New Worlds, right? Like what we
it's a very unique one. Almost nobody saw it in the order that you did.
All I know is the kind of what number one went through with, and then also what Noonien Singh's going through, and how we've dealt with this and how it's outlawed and kind of and what's cool about that versus this is that I can see sort of the progress in the Federation's thinking, but limited progress, and how even less ethically defensible it is now than it was then in that in the Strange New World episode. So I thought it was cool. Really curious the hows and whys about it, less so about the ramifications, because I really thought it was going to come down to O'Brien keeping the secret. and like their friendship, and have we built their friendship enough? Is this going to put a strain on it? Is he going to accept him? Because interestingly, the pacing does some really interesting things. Yes, it was kind of tongue-in-cheeky, these sort of testimonials we got earlier on the episode, but if you go back and you read O'Brien's, it very much speaks to his humanity, and it very much speaks to his traits that are not genetically
his
altered.
Humanity, not his ability.
Which then puts great context on this exchange. So yes, I was shocked, not shocked. I thought it was a cool twist because it adds a lot of color, and it adds an ability for us to rally again. So, like it did in Strange New Worlds, I think it adds some great opportunity here. So, and we'll see how they handle it.
Yeah, I do too. So O'Brien says, "Look, I'm sorry about this. I wish it hadn't happened, but it did, and now we've got a problem. I don't want to talk about it. Julian, Zimmerman's about to file a report saying that Dr. Bashir is not suitable for computer modeling because of his suspected genetically enhanced background. Do you know what's going to happen when that report gets back to Starfleet Medical?" Bashir says they'll start a formal investigation which will lead to my eventual dismissal from the service. And he finally tells the tale of how we got here. He says I was 6, small for my age, and a bit awkward physically, and not very bright. In the first grade, while the other children were learning how to read and write and use a computer, I was still trying to tell a dog from a cat and a tree from a house. I didn't really understand what was happening. I knew that I wasn't doing as well as my classmates, and there were so many concepts they took for granted that I couldn't begin to master, and I didn't know why. All I knew was that I was a great disappointment to my parents. Which is a tough and interesting thing to think about. I think everybody has felt that way in some different ways, but it's also the fact that they just assumed that he was dumb and didn't have, a learning disability or have some other obstacle that was happening there, and they jumped right to genetically modifying him, which I think is what his anger is all about in all of this. But it's interesting. What did you think?
So I talked about this a little bit on the stream. I mentioned it here, and I'm doing so very calmly and from a different place of perspective. However, my mom, whom I love, who's sitting in the other room right now, all through elementary school, all the way through middle school, all the way through high school. Things changed a little bit in high school because of other complications, but I struggled mightily in school. I couldn't focus. If I wasn't interested in something, I couldn't find a strategy to study it properly. I don't multitask very well. Can't listen to music. I had a lot of challenges, learning challenges. My parents did not, and to be fair, my school did not recognize this as any sort of potential learning challenge or learning disability and offer support to me. So my parents, my mom specifically, just chalked it up to, because my brother is not that way. My brother's very, he's a lot of learning.
He's a go-getter.
Yeah. Just chalked it up to you're lazy and a little not bright. And so it was not a lot of support and a lot of shame and anger. And so to say I empathized with Bashir here is an understatement. It really tied me to it, which brings up a lot of questions and answers, right? If my parents could have shook a magic wand, would they have done so? Would I have been angry?
And this is the equivalent to the magic wand, yeah.
Would I have been angry for them to do so? I remember, at least from my experience, wanting help. Knowing that it wasn't, because I was trying, I'm not lazy. I want to do this, but I can't. That for me was the biggest trouble, is I could not articulate what the challenge was. And that is an issue. Now we live in a time where, one of our patrons, whom I won't share too much of the story, I'll let them chime in under their own auspice, but is dealing with a child with special needs and how they are choosing to even with all of the sort of the advent of earlier diagnoses and a lot of more help medically, medicinally, all of these things, that doesn't make the challenges easier, and that doesn't mean there's a guidebook and the day-to-day, the minutia of it doesn't get any easier just with the knowledge of what's wrong. So I'll allow them to add that context post haste or after the episode. But my point is that this is such a great topic to converse about. And once again, 90s, right? Even though this isn't really, it's really about the genetic modification. That's sort of the big sci-fi point we're talking about. That's not the conversation, the dinner table conversation that this brings up for us. And I think it's so cool that a show from the mid 90s can still be doing this.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's so many different reasons for feeling like this kid. And like for me, I did too. It wasn't a learning disability, but it was emotional. That I had anxiety, I had shame or whatever, and if I didn't feel safe with the teacher, I had a really hard time learning. And so, like, you know, if I had like I had a math teacher in high school who was like just a rank bully.
Yeah, I had
absolutely
very similar. I would get nauseous before going into that class, actually.
Yeah, and he was just a piece of shit, and he would bully the kids, and I was so uncomfortable in the classroom. I really, really struggled to take in the information. And so I was, you know, I was like a D student in that math class, barely passed. The next year, had a teacher who just wasn't a garbage person, and I got like a 98 in the entire year, because I was so emotionally connected to whether I felt safe with a teacher, and just so many. The point is, there's so many reasons that somebody might not be succeeding in an environment, and especially in the 80s and 90s, there was just a profound lack of curiosity as to why that might be, and we jumped straight to judgment and shame and bullying, you know, and like punishment.
There's so many tangents, not tangents. There's so many threads we can follow with this. One I'll point out that came to mind as well that I think is a little more specifically to Julian, because I think what we're saying too is that it's easy right now to empathize with Julian, and that's especially in '97 when we were at that age. I would have probably gone right to his viewpoint. We'll get to the conversation about the parents later, but I will say, I watched a movie a few years ago. It came to mind when I was watching this, called The Sound of Metal, with Rez Ahmed, and it's about this deaf man. And there is a sort of a plot beat where there's this conversation about whether he wants to do the cochlear implants or not. And he has this sort of one friend, confidant in the deaf community who encourages him not to do the cochlear implants because there's nothing wrong with you. You are fine, right? Like there's nothing wrong with being hearing impaired. You can exist fine without these things. You don't have to be normal like that. And I found like that this is that's actually a great sort of parallel to this conversation as well. Yeah. Right? Is there something wrong with...
Yeah.
Now, the only other question I'll have before we can talk about all this at the end. Julian, the way he described his challenge...
Right.
Felt sort of not just like normal kid not advancing a little behind in class. It felt like he was describing something extraordinary a bit.
Well, right.
So that does add a different stake. It wasn't just like, oh, he was a little behind, so we sought these.
Well, and it begs the question, like, was he actually not that bright, or was it something else? And I don't think even he has the curiosity to dig into that. Maybe there's a reason he doesn't want to dig into that. I don't know. It's very interesting.
But I do feel like they would have made a bigger deal about, like, I had an actual, like, handicap or a physical, like, a genetic, like, I didn't develop correctly. But they didn't.
But I think what pisses him off is that he never got the chance to figure out.
Yeah. Right.
They were not patient enough to even figure out what the problem was to begin with. But it's interesting your point about the movie with Riz Ahmed. My buddy Jay is deaf and is a composer, musical composer. and he composes great music and is completely deaf, and so he hears super low-end sympathetic vibrations from the piano and is able to compose off of that.
That's
Anyway,
awesome.
it's fascinating. Really good guy. Anyway, where were we? So 20 minutes ago, I was reading this. So his parents, in response to this, took him to an illegal genetic modification place. And he says, my mental abilities were the top priority, of course. My IQ jumped 5 points a day for over 2 weeks. So, what is that? 14 times 5. My IQ was not good
Almost
enough.
100.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's an awful lot. So even if he started at like 80, he's up there now. That was followed by improvements with my hand-eye coordination, reflexes, vision, stamina, height, weight. In the end, everything but my name was altered in some way. When we returned to Earth, we moved to a different city. I was enrolled in a new school using falsified records my parents obtained somewhere, and instead of being the slowest learner, I was the star pupil. And O'Brien says no one suspected. Bashir says something here I think is really interesting. There's no stigma attached to success,
Yeah.
Chief. There's no stigma attached to success. It's such a good line. Like Ronald D. Moore's writing in this part of the episode is so good. And he says, I never looked back. The truth is, I'm a fraud. And O'Brien says, you're not a fraud. I don't care what enhancements your parents may have done. Genetic recoding can't give you ambition or personality or compassion or any of the things that truly make a person human. Also, so great. Like, compassion, empathy, ambition, whatever, has nothing to do with IQ, right?
Right.
And but Bashir knows his only opinion now is to resign from his only option now is to resign from Starfleet. O'Brien says there hasn't been a case like this in 100 years, which we found out about in Strange New Worlds. Great working within the architecture of your stories, doing it that way. So in Act 5, Rom is heartbroken, and Quark reminds him what happened with Nog's mother. So this is backstory I don't think we know at this point, but it kind of makes sense. Quark says, you signed a standard 5-year marriage contract with Prinadora's father because you wanted a child. A simple, everyday business deal, but then you fell in love with your wife and wanted to extend the contract. You were so in love that you never bothered to read the extension before signing it. So in the end, her father swindled you out of all of your money, and Prinadora left you for a richer man, and you are stuck with Nog. Hooray for romance. And that... Oh, poor Nog. But it makes sense. Like, that is the backstory of how you end up on the station working for your brother with your kid. Of course, I think Rom probably doesn't feel like he was stuck with Nog, but it makes sense from Quark's perspective. And I wrote down, Quark is such an asshole this episode.
Yeah, not great.
He's such a dick to everybody. What's going on with Quark? However, he does offer Rom a porno suite program. Which, I mean... You're an asshole. It's not like I'm not going to take you up on that, though.
I'm not going to use it, but I'll hold on to it.
I'm not going to tell you that I used it, but you're not going to use it.
Yeah, but you might want to hire the cleaners.
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily he is the tech for the holosuite, so he can probably. So he's the only one who knows how to use the what's the shadow mode or the non
Incognito.
Incognito. He knows how to put the incognito mode on the holosuite. So we go to Bashir's quarters, and he discusses the situation with his parents. His father wants to make a plan. And Bashir says, a new plan? Yes, let's come up with a new plan. That's the way we do things in this family, isn't it? We don't face our problems, we just come up with new plans. Don't like your job? Move on to the next one. Don't like the law? find a way around it. And whatever you do, don't ever accept responsibility. You said it before, I'm your legacy, your proud gift to the world. Well, Father, your gift is about to be revealed as a fraud just like you.
Damn.
Gloves are off. Gloves are off for this scene. And his father says, I'm still your father, Jules. You will not speak to me like that. No, you used to be my father. Now you're my architect, the man who designed a better son to replace the defective one he was given. You were falling behind. I was 6 years old. You decided I was a failure in first grade. Julian finally snaps here, and I think this scene is the best work that Siddig has ever done.
I would say that's about right.
And what really I thought was interesting, if you watch his face during this monologue where he's like shouting at them, he really looks like his uncle Malcolm McDowell. That's where I said, like, oh my God, instantly he turned into Malcolm McDowell there. Really interesting. But his mother comes in and says, you don't know. You've never had a child. You don't know what it's like to watch your son, to watch him fall a little bit further behind every day, to know that he's trying, but something's holding him back. You don't know what it's like to stay up every night worrying that maybe it's your fault. Maybe you did something wrong during the pregnancy. Maybe you weren't careful enough, or maybe there's something wrong with you. Maybe you passed on a genetic defect without even knowing it. You can condemn us for what we did, say it was illegal or immoral, whatever you want to say. But you have to understand that we didn't do it because we were ashamed, but because you were our son and we loved you.
Damn.
And there is the alternate point of view on the whole thing. And I don't think it's completely ever resolved. It's not resolved between them either. They hug, but Bashir is going to go tender his resignation the next morning.
So yeah, like, I want to bring up 2 points here that are probably like hot button kind of conversations, and it's just this sort of stream of consciousness. That's how I run. So,
did you genetically modify your cats?
Yeah. Well, so, you know, genetic modification a lot of times has you think you go back to like Goebbels, right? Like they're trying, or the Nazis being like, we want to genetically modify, basically breed out. But if they had the science,
you're doing eugenics sort of. Yeah.
But if they had sci-fi, I'm sure that would have been the next kind of thing. So that's the negative connotation. But hold on, let's go a different way, right? In modern times, we have tests now. Now I don't have kids, so this is all second experiences I've heard via other people. But there are tests they have now that can tell whether your kids will have certain genetic disabilities, right?
Sure.
Or I don't know if it's 100% or a very high percentage, and there are people who choose to decide that they can't take that responsibility on and decide maybe to end the pregnancy or whatnot. And once again, totally your choice. Sure. I'm very pro-choice. However, if the choices went end pregnancy, take on this huge financial and difficult thing, I guess adoption or whatnot, genetically alter, right?
Fix it.
You're a parent who was gonna love your kid regardless, but wouldn't you want to set them up for a child for an easier experience, an easier life? I think the same. I have some friends whose childhood just came out to them, and they are very supportive. They want to support the child. But a lot of their disappointment or feelings of angst isn't because they don't support their child's identity. It's because they just everybody wants the path of least resistance for their child, right? And so if you think,
a hard road.
As a parent, if you think compassion first, it's not a shock that they'd say, "Oh, my child is lagging. He's got problems. I want to help them." So the line here is, they're saying we wanted to help you, and Bashir saying you wanted to fix me. And therein lies that difference. And it's so cool to me. This scene is epic because I left it being like, I 100% feel and see both sides of this coin.
Yeah.
That's pretty hard to do.
And I think the whole quandary of all of this, like it is it's a, and the real life ones you're talking about, boy, that's a conversation, not a statement.
Yeah, 100%.
And and it's like, it's got to be intensely personal to the people, and which is why when we're talking about bodily autonomy, I'm not part of that conversation, and nor should you be if you're not the person dealing with it.
And I think that's what's tough about bipartisan politics. Bipartisan politics is that often in elections that you're trying to win, you boil these conversations down to black and white, this is good, this is bad, or worse, not this is good, this is bad, this is evil, this is an atrocity, right? So, but it's not. There's no nuance often in our political conversation or in our general discourse, and which is why, thank God, we have science fiction and media to sort of be able to just breach the conversation a little bit.
Yep. Interesting. Anyway, I don't think we're going to solve this, weirdly. Anyway, so Bashir the next morning goes to Cisco's office to resign, but he finds his parents there and an admiral on the holo communicator. We find out it's all been arranged. He can keep his practice. They found out, they told what happened. He can keep his practice and his commission, but his father is going to prison for 2 years. And he has pled guilty in exchange for Bashir's career. And Bennett, the admiral, explains why. 200 years ago, we tried to improve the species through DNA resequencing. And what did we get for our troubles? The eugenics war. For every Julian Bashir that can be created, there's a Khan Singh waiting in the wings, a superhuman whose ambition and thirst for power has been enhanced along with his intellect. The law against genetic engineering provides a firewall against such men, and it's my job to keep that firewall intact. And so I think what we see here is the shift between the Strange New World's understanding of it to today, because the Strange New World, it was much more of a moral failing that somebody did this. And 100 years later, it's a practical thing. It's too dangerous. So it's outlawed because it's too dangerous. Whereas before, it was outlawed because it was immoral in some fashion.
Yeah, but regardless, now you're basically saying it's outlawed, but we're going to give a couple of people the decision-making power to make it okay, right? So you're not saying you can't be in Starfleet. It's being like, unless later on we find out about it and then we decide it's maybe okay.
Well, but I think that's right, because you're punishing the people who did the crime. The crime is doing the genetic modifications. The crime is not being genetically modified.
Right, but then so there's still war. There's still war, right? So we're still conflict. So then you still could create genetically modified super soldiers, and then because it's not their fault, you can still clone war it, and you just like.
Well, but they can't anyway.
Yeah, you're right. I guess.
Like
I don't know. Just something about this, and we can talk about it later. Something about this feels way too easily buttoned up.
Because I think from a moral perspective, right, the crime was done to him. He did not perpetrate the crime. Whether or not you agree that it should be a crime or not, right? Mm-hmm. And by this point, he has the reason the law is there is because sometimes it goes horribly wrong and it's super dangerous. But by now he has proven that he is not dangerous. He is not a con. He has proven that he is benevolent. He is benign, and so he is a victim, not the perpetrator. So you punish the perpetrator as a deterrence for other people making that choice.
So then, aren't we severely? Aren't we severely undercutting people we let into Starfleet, shouldn't we then open the doors to those who've been genetically modified if they're willing to, if we vet them properly?
Well, I don't know that they aren't. I know that Bashir assumed...
Sounds like a don't ask, don't tell type of policy here.
I think it is a don't ask, don't tell policy. I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, which I thought we weren't digging that.
No. You can be genetically modified.
Just
All right,
don't mention it.
don't tell anyone. I did not genetically modify that woman. All right, good Lord, where are we? So, later... Bashir says goodbye to his parents at the airlock, and Julian appreciates his father's sacrifice. While they are not all resolved, they at least have come to some level of peace.
His dad
They
seems
leave.
chuffed to hell about it. He's like, I get to do some reading. I don't gotta work. He's leaving mom. Mom's like, I guess I'll be all right. He's like, 2 years in prison? This sounds great.
Well, I mean... But it makes sense, right? They've had this thing hanging over them
Yes.
for 20 years,
Yep.
for 30 years.
And he's going to Martha Stewart prison.
And he's going to Martha Stewart prison. Like, this is the best possible scenario. Like, yes, he has to deal with it. Like, you have to pay your taxes, right? However, now I don't have to fear the IRS.
That analogy didn't quite work, but I think good enough.
Look, my parents didn't genetically modify me like they should have. My metaphors suck. So they leave, and then Zimmerman and Lita also arrive at the airlock. She's gonna go with him. But, of course, before she does, we hear Rom screaming down the halls, "Wait!" And he finally confesses his love. And she says she loves him too, and they kiss. And Picardo does a great job of pretending that he's happy for them, then immediately hits on a hot alien lady. No surprise. So we get that like you said, we know that that's coming right from the very beginning.
Yeah, the question I guess I didn't ask myself during the episode, which was weird, is that, like, you can't completely hide Lita behind, like, she's just posturing to convince Rom to come and save her, right? She's clearly gonna go.
Yeah. Well,
I guess-
I mean, I think on some level, although I think her not just speaking up for herself doesn't speak to strength, I do think her, like, look, if he can't do it, he can't do it. I need to move on.
But I don't have to move into this dude's. Maybe they made an agreement that she'll, like, get her own room.
Yeah, we don't know the whole situation, but yes, I do think that's, or maybe she's just like brinksmanship. We don't know that she actually would have gotten on.
Fair.
So, unclear. But regardless of whether or not I think that is, like, the most up-to-date, satisfying way to handle that, I'm really happy for Nog and Lita.
I at least wish, this is gonna be a weird poll, I at least wish they had Sweet Home Alabama did. Do you remember that movie?
Never saw it.
God, I don't know why, folks. I love Sweet Home Alabama. I don't generally rewatch stuff, but that movie I will watch when it's on. Reese Witherspoon, McConaughey, and Patrick Dempsey. Patrick Dempsey plays her New York beau, and then she ends up falling for her old high school sweetheart. No, it's not Patrick Dempsey. It's not McConaughey. It's a McConaughey adjacent fella.
Oh,
but
yeah. Sounds like a Hallmark movie.
It's
The
really
city people are evil.
It's
You
really
need to get back to your
It's really
roots.
good. Candice Bergen's in it. She's great. Anyway,
They're all business, business, business.
the point is, at the end of that, like, McDreamy or McDuffie, but it is McDreamy. He ends up being happy for her that she's with her, person she really loves. But you do know the whole time through he did really love her. Like, had she ended up with him, she would have been all right because he did have feelings for her. Here, I would at least we could have had Picardo, like, dig her a little bit and not just be like aruga, aruga.
But he was there for like 2 days.
Hey, Stranger Things about aruga.
Yes, I mean that was that. But like, why do we have to root for them? Why can't he just be a weird old perv? I mean,
Well said.
Yeah. I mean, like, I hope I'm aging gracefully into my weird old perv era.
Yep. Oh, there we go. Now we have the final cut for the episode.
All right, lastly, in Quarks, O'Brien and Bashir are playing darts again. And O'Brien finally realizes that Bashir is genetically superior physically as well as mentally, and has been letting him win for years. He makes Bashir really play, and of course, he's actually superpowered. So now he has to stand much further back from now on. Which I think is fun. And we finish with a shot of 3 giant Federation ships in orbit of Deep Space Nine, reused from Ray of the Warrior, but I thought it looks really great. Again, reinforcing that as much as things change, the more things change, because everything is different as well. Okay, Mike, let us begin like we always do. Are there any wormholes in your plot here?
We talked about it a little bit before. There's probably some ramifications, like previous wormholes that we've opened up by having him be genetically altered. Like if we go back when you really fine-tooth combed it all the way through. Clearly, they didn't decide in the Bible meetings early on in production that this was going to be his character. But
right,
meh.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because it is such a big swing, right? It is such a big change to the character that both, like, yeah, if you start picking at it too hard, like, for instance, last episode, Garrick was in there with his claustrophobia trying to fix the thing, and he's like, oh, I'm too dumb, I can't figure it out. Totally could have figured it out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Fixing the so I think if you dig hard enough, you're going to find problems with it. But in the grander scheme of things, I think it makes sense to me. I like this change. It's a change we're going to have moving forward. Like, it's not going anywhere. And I think that it feels right.
Also, since he was cloned for a month, like the founders actually sort of gained a little bit of information because they would have known, and maybe not. I don't know how the genetic modification works, to be honest with you, but because I guess they're just replicating their form. Do they? Because
I don't think you gain their intelligence, because like if they turned themselves into a gerbil, they'd never know how to turn themselves out of a gerbil.
And also the response, well, this isn't a wormhole, I'll talk about it later, but we didn't mention the response that everybody has in that little cohort at the end where they decide what to do with Bashir's parents. Sisko doesn't seem to be upset that Bashir kept this from him. O'Brien sure isn't. Like, nobody seems that bothered by it, so at least our ethics seem to have moved forward.
Well, and because I think they respect his privacy. You know, now from Starfleet's point of view, yes, don't do that, that's bad, but do we have a superhero doctor on our most important place in the universe? And yet they still don't let him be
the Doctor hologram?
Well, because I think
that they don't want people to like do any digging.
I don't think they want to encourage other people to do it, and I bet they would be like, all right, we're gonna let this happen. Maybe keep it relatively on the DL that this is happening. But for everybody else around him, like, it's great, because not only is he this, he can take the gloves off and start acting on it, and that's a benefit. Anyway, all right, best moment.
There's really 2 here. I'm going to let you take the big one and talk about it, expound on it a little bit more. So I'm going to take a lesser known one. I actually think the end, there's 2 beats here I love for just like overall storytelling. And it's because we did the work. We've done such work with O'Brien and Bashir in so many episodes that you get 2 bits here that I think are really awesome. I mentioned one before when O'Brien is doing his sort of one-on-one straight to camera, and he's talking about a lot of the things he loves about Bashir, and in the tongue-in-cheek of, please don't let him see this. And you think it's going to be something bad, and then it's all the good stuff.
Right, of course.
But that last scene with the darts, as far as tags go, because a lot of times, I complain the tags seem so flip and so whatever, and we're like, oh, you just kind of threw that all away. This week, it says a lot, because he realizes that this guy, whom I'm always talking about being such a pain in the ass, has been faking it this whole time.
Right.
Not just to spare my ego, but because maybe all of this is because he enjoys spending time with me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about the darts. It's never been about the darts. And
it makes you wonder, with all like the arrogant preening and competitiveness.
Yeah, wasn't he also playing like Zoom ball with Kira?
Yeah, playing
whatnot?
Zoom. Yeah, exactly. And like,
all of that is, yes, a front, but also here it did something to the friendship. Their friendship for me in this episode, even though not about that at all, actually went up like 6 pegs, because I was like, this is really specific storytelling, and all the breadcrumbs were set. And I really feel like their bond might be tighter than anybody else in the episode in the show right now. So I'm going to use that as my best moment.
The ways that they care for each other, right? Bashir caring for O'Brien by not, just pounding him to the pavement on everything, even though his characteristic is like the arrogant competitive guy. Well, he's not actually. He's hiding, he's holding back. And then O'Brien being there for him, and like, I don't care about all the legal and the genetic and the IQ. You're a person, you're a human, and I appreciate your humanity, which is what he really needed to hear in that moment. So, all right, so my best moment, I think I've sort of talked about it. I just think the sequence of scenes with Bashir and his parents, and the fight that they had, the battle that they have, I think it's excellent writing. I think it's Alex Siddig's best work as an actor. It feels very real. It feels very lived in. It feels very earned and genuine, which not only is that good writing, it's good acting, but also like he's having to do all of this with actors who just came in that day. Like, this isn't acting opposite Avery Brooks or whatever. It's all these unfamiliar people the story hasn't dealt with before. I thought he just did a tremendous job in those sequence of scenes.
Is it time?
It's time.
You get some samples. Hell yeah, they are so silly. Here are some samples for you.
I think it needs to be said, season 5 here, there has been 3 or 4 just magnificent conversations around parents and children and the relationship thereof. Just like, just deeper, more empathetic conversations about the relationship between parents and children. Then, like, I can point to a lot of other properties in their entirety have done.
Yeah.
And this is another one that is just excellent. And maybe it's where we sit in our lives, Keith, that they ring so true to us. But I just really want to point out how excellent they have been. And that stands here. Relationships. In the grand scheme of just like all these pews and all the political drama and table setting that we've done in the past few weeks that we enjoy as well, man, when we really, what did I talk about this episode? Oh, parents and children, and two male buddies figuring out how to love each other, right? Really, pretty awesome. I'll start with the B plot. Actually, as far as B plots go, I'm fine with it. Yes, plenty to nitpick about it, but generally speaking, the chemistry's there. We get them together. We've got 2 really kind of cool odd couple type relationships on the ship now, or on the station. Cool. I'm interested to see how that develops. I think the big criticism of this episode that we'll hear is the status quo of it all, right? Well, we never for a second felt like Bashir is going to actually get decommissioned, so there's no drama there, and of course it's going to be okay. And look, yeah, correct. It just, thus far, in the times it's been brought up and the times it's happened, the Odo thing and this, it hasn't bothered me, because it feels like, whilst true, well, yeah, of course, Bashir's not getting fired today. I get it. Lita's not leaving the ship, to Rom's dismay. But if it's earned, for me, it's earned. And it wasn't about whether he's going to leave the ship or not. That's not what it's about to me. It's about the conversation it brings up. And they paced it perfectly, where they tease the mystery only long enough. They reveal it in a cool way that I think that is
It's got some sci-fi to it.
Twice in this episode, Bashir is sort of the rug's pulled from underneath him. He doesn't want to talk about it, but they bring his parents anyway. And then the secret is kind of found out in a serendipitous yet sort of slightly underhanded way, with a facsimile of him, which is interesting. And so he is there's a hair in his butt, and he's upset about it. But the way that conversation unfolds is he gets all that anger out first, and his parents just take it, and then his mom comes to the defense. It's just structured so well. It feels very play-like, Keith. In fact, it feels very much like a play of yours I read once upon a time. About how sometimes these really heated and elevated conversations in and of themselves are rife with storytelling and drama. I just really thought it was excellent. And like you said, Siddig is excellent in this. I think the parents are excellent. The dad with a sort of false bravado, which almost mirrors Bashir's, and they both did it in different ways, right? If you think about the false bravado the dad has, that's clearly hiding his own insecurities and his path, whereas Bashir's was a false flag operation to hide his actual gifts, which were created because of shame. It's just very cool.
And his father's, probably not being as bright as other people, but wishing that he were, is what he projected that onto his son with the genetic engineering.
Just excellent. I don't have a lot of criticism, to be honest with you. I really think the ending feels a little buttoned up, but you fixed a lot of that for me with sort of, there has been progress as far as Starfleet is concerned. Whether it's enough progress, that's a conversation we have to this day about life, right?
Right.
It's never enough, and it's never fast enough. Whew. I think I'm going to do another one, Keith.
Woo!
I'm coming swinging. A+, 94 stem bolts.
94. Yeah. I'll try not to repeat too much going on here, but this is another one where, the regression towards the mean, everything getting set up. I know people will criticize this because of the sort of false peril, like you said, but I don't think this episode falls into that category, because we don't return to normal here. Bashir has been outed as this genetically modified person. He's not gonna go back in the closet, right? That's going to change his character for the rest of the series. He will always now be this person with these gifts, and that's going to work out it's going to be part of the storytelling moving forward. So it's not a regression to the means episode. And in terms of the false stakes, we knew he wasn't going to get fired, but that's not where the stakes are coming from in this episode, and that is not where the stakes are coming from in a lot of the episodes. It's the emotional stakes, it's the relationship stakes that do get played out, that are high. These parent-child stakes are enormous. The risk of the rupture of the friendship. Bashir is assuming that O'Brien is going to, and everybody else is going to reject him and kick him out. And sort of like being outed, for lots of other reasons, he's afraid that people are going to reject him, or going to fear him, or going to think whatever. And they're all like, no, man, I got you. You're a person. That's all I care about. And I think that is, so the stakes are real. They're important, and I think the complexity of the parent-child relationship told here through one episode like this is really, really interesting. I understand who his father is, who his mother is, why they made the choices they did. I understand why he resents them and what they did in all of these different ways, and why, and understanding O'Brien's relationship with himself, with this secret that he's holding. It all really holds together beautifully, and that's why it doesn't feel weird and abrupt and tacked on. That's why it is a twist. It is a giant piece of information that doesn't feel weird or abrupt. It feels right because the logic is so well structured underneath it, both emotionally and practically. And so I love this new development for Bashir. I love adding this layer. It makes him so much more interesting. Both when he's hiding it retroactively makes stuff more interesting, but it also opens up so many cool new storytelling that we can do moving forward. So I really like all of that. You know, that I'm happy for Ram and Lita. I wish it was a slightly more satisfying get together cute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that sort of shows its age a little bit. You know, but I think I've gone on a journey with that, you know, with the feeling that there's something condescendingly sexist about the Lita character and how they're dealing with that. So that went here, but then also I'm realizing my own condescending sexism, like I like, oh, she has no agency, and now I'm thinking then my own sexism took away more agency, and that it's she might, you know, might choose to, it's like our understanding of sex work, right? It's like first like, oh, it's all this terrible thing and they're being exploited, whatever. Like, all right, well, that's true sometimes. It's not always true, and it's not always a lack of agency when somebody chooses to be a part of that. It's complex, it's deeper, and so I leave more room for Lita to be Lita, however she chooses to be from there. So
we basically just have to Lita her alone.
we gotta leave Lita alone. Lita her alone. Yep. So 90.5 stem bolts for me. I like this episode. I really like moving forward the doors it's going to open for us. In the world, it gets a 7.7 on IMDb, which puts it at 64 out of 173 episodes. Up next, we are talking about a simple investigation. Oh, how simple will it be? I don't know. We're going to find out next week. Thank you so much for watching, especially those of you who stuck around for 2 hours we've been talking. A long one. Thank you all for choosing to spend this time, your valuable time, with us idiots here on the internet. We will see you back next week with a simple investigation. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM. Yeah. I mean, like, I hope I'm aging gracefully into my weird old perv era.